Hey, this is Lou Mangello from WDW Radio, and you're listening to the Fiveish Fangirls podcast. Let's do this.
The tangents and squeezy continue all the way to episode 480 of the Fiveish Fangirls podcast, and I don't even know what the body count is at this point. Bodies just left and up and down and in the ground and in stuff, and just murder everywhere.
We got
fun
the
time to
murder
be on
hobos.
Disney Plus.
Yeah, we got murder hobos. And
careful if you end up on Disney Plus. You might not make it to see the other side. Welcome everyone to this week's episode of the Fiveish Fangirls podcast. So glad you join us. Let's start off like we do Rick with the virtual table and see who's joined us this week.
This is Brittany in Bangor.
This is Holly from Wisconsin.
This is Rachel in Indianapolis, Indiana. Hello, everyone.
Hello.
Greetings. Yes, we have got a lot to talk about, and we decided that this was not a task that we wanted to face alone.
No.
So we called in reinforcements. With a certain fellow footy fan, among other things, and also an Only Murders convert, and also a big MCU fan. So welcome back for, I don't even know what appearance this is. Nick, DJ Nik! Yay!
Hey everybody, thanks so much for having me back. Really been looking forward to this getting to discuss two fantastic shows. Really looking forward to it, so really appreciate the invitation and happy to be here.
Yes. So, well, before we get to that, we don't have anything in the way of news. I think because at least in the US, the last couple of weeks have been kind of but we're not going to talk about that. Like, we're not going to talk about Bruno. Although there's that in the gold standard feed for you. Sorry, not sorry about the earworm. Yes, we did recently discuss Encanto on gold standard. So you can go check that out. But really, that's it. So we're gonna get the feedback, and we got a decent amount of feedback from Shalane. She says, "Welcome, girls. We survived Halloween and the election. Let's not talk about the election. Who was elected, COVID or 2020?" Very good idea. We don't talk about Bruno. I was wondering where you girls were last week. I thought you'd post on your socials that there wouldn't be an episode, especially since Rachel mentioned it on Gold Standard. Yeah, that's on me. Sorry. It's been really, really crazy at work. Anyway, I'm really excited about the upcoming Marvel shows for Disney Plus. They should run ads for those, especially during Agatha Darkhold Diaries, Agatha All Along / Agatha All Along. These shows feel like an early Christmas present, and they're going to be awesome. Especially looking forward to What If Season 3. They'll probably do what they did with Season 2, drop one episode one day and another the next. I'm also excited for Ironheart. Maybe we'll get hints about the Young Avengers. Yeah, hopefully. Speaking of Marvel, I thought you girls were going to talk about Agatha this week, along with Only Murders in the Building, but I'll be patient for those episodes. Hey, Shalane, wait no more. As
Good
for
things
Wicked,
come to those who wait.
Exactly. As for Wicked, here's the merch I've gotten so far. Funko Pop's Her Universe outfits, sweaters and sweatpants, shoes and slippers, Glinda's wand and costume, and yes, I'm going to get the dolls, but probably from the website you girls mentioned, not the website that was on the box, but like website where you can order stuff. The less we talk about the website misprint, the better.
Yeah.
Although I did see on TikTok somebody was able to buy Fiero, I think at Target, because they had not pulled them from the shelf, but he had been told by other people when they tried to purchase the cash register wouldn't let them, which
Got it.
you could avoid that if you just pull the merchandise off the shelf, but whatever.
Mhm.
But in this case, they still had a Fiero, which you didn't have yet, on the shelf, and it let him buy it with the mistaken URL of the box. So,
Ladies and gentlemen, this is why proofreading is very important.
not just
Mhm.
proofreading, not just proofreading, checking your websites,
That too.
your code.
Big difference between .com, .net, .org, .edu.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, really, the musical. I mean, we're going to talk about Wicked and all things Wizard of Oz next week, actually. But you would think that, considering the musical has been around for more than 20 years, that they would have snatched up that particular website URL
Yeah.
like right away, unless the other people already had it.
That could be. Or unless
which-
somebody oops and forgot to pay, and then somebody swiped in and took it. They thought they still had it, and oopsies.
I don't
Guess
know.
we don't.
Yeah, I don't know what happened there, but it's funny. Yeah. Goes to
The-
show
the-
you
the-
all
the
the money
uncomfortable
empowered
funny.
corporate America doesn't protect you from everything.
Mm-mm.
So, but yes, and she has been getting quite, and the Hero Universe outfits. First of all, Shalane, you're very lucky that you can pull off like almost every color. She's got that skin tone and hair that it works really well.
Mhm.
While the Glinda dress is very cute, if I could carry off that shade of pink, it's a very cute style. But the Alphaba jacket with the built-in cape, oh my god, that thing is so cute.
Mhm.
I need it like yesterday. So might be adding that to my Christmas list. Just saying. Okay, she continues. I feel like Wicked is the only musical-based movie that's getting widespread merchandise at places like Walmart and Target. It's funny because we've had other musical-based movies like Phantom of the Opera, Les Mis, Into the Woods, Sweeney Todd, Mamma Mia, and Hairspray, but they didn't have the kind of mainstream merch. You can find some stuff on Amazon, Etsy, eBay, or at the gift shop at the theater where the musical is playing, but not in regular retail stores. That is very true. That's I think that's just because Wicked being part, air quotes, part of the larger Wizard of Oz lore, and that in itself, they quickly, I don't know if it was Baum specifically or his estate, because those books are over 100 years old, hence they're in the public domain. I believe at least the first one is. There's 14 just in the Alfred Baum penned books. But the movie, obviously MGM knew that merchandising and licensing was going to be a big thing. So there's been Wizard of Oz merchandise for a long time. So the studio was like, yeah, we're not missing out on this cash cow by any means. So not when it's got this rabid of a fan base. No, I can't imagine there would be as much call for Meryl Streep from Mamma Mia Barbie doll, but hey, maybe. On a separate note, Sailor Moon had a live action series in Japan. Like I've said before, I'm more of a casual anime fan, but that's a fun fact. This finishes the trailers for Thunderbolts and Captain America Brave New World drop. Kind of that D23 event down in South America. They released some trailers, but I don't think the trailers are that different than the ones we've already gotten. So, although we are getting close to the release dates for those, so but no, I think they're just kind of rehashing the same trailers over and over again, and as we get much closer, we'll get that quote unquote final trailer. Also, there's been news about the episode titles for Stranger Things season 5. It sounds like the season will be set in 1987. Exciting. Yes, we did get that from Netflix, a nice little video with all of the episode titles for the final season of Stranger Things, and that's very exciting. So, presumably the order that they're presented in the little video is the order of the actual episodes, because it kind of seems appropriate that the very last episode of the final season, the series finale of Stranger Things, will be called The Right Side Up.
Yeah. it makes the most sense, because they've been in the upside down for how long?
Exactly. I just love that. There's just something very, like, I don't know, poetic about that. It's just like, oh. So, yeah. Next year's gonna be fun.
Yes.
Oh, that is Shalane's feedback. So thank you, Shalane. Oh, I know. Also, like these other things, that Nik is also a big Stranger Things fan as well. So
Time, yes.
Yes. So. All right. So moving on, ending Shalane's wait, just staring at the feeds, I'm sure, just refreshing, going, come on, girls. No, she's got better things to do. But ending the wait, yes, we are finally going to talk about both Agatha All Along and the latest season of Only Murders in the Building. And because I know at least Holly and we have lots of questions about Only Murders. So there's probably going to a lot of tangenting. So to not hold up the witches on the road, because that would go badly. We're going to talk about Agatha first.
Yeah, methinks the coven would get crazy if we didn't talk about them first.
Yes, that too. So, but yes, this is our first well, technically it is the first Marvel live action, I believe I read this correctly, it's the first Marvel live action adaptation of one of their characters that does not have their own series of comics. Because Agatha she appears in other people's comics, but she has never had her own run.
That is correct. Yes.
Yeah. Because when she was created, she was actually the Fantastic Four's nanny.
And much older.
Yes.
Time to get a new nanny, and who did she pay off to pass that background check?
Yeah. Well, the Agatha in the comics, she's much older.
And not an evil witch in that case.
Yeah, right. Yeah. She is like a granny. In the comics. Yeah. But yeah, no, she is a nanny for Mr. Fantastic in the Mrs. Their kid. So yeah. So this is actually the first time that a character that's not has had their own run in the comics is getting a feature like this, which is kind of cool.
She's also a mentor to Wanda in the comics compared to being an adversary.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So obviously this is kind of a spin-off / sequel-ish to WandaVision, with the return of Catherine Hahn as Agatha Harkness. This is set about approximately 3 years after the end of WandaVision, which even at this point, I am kind of lost where we are calendar-wise within the MCU. I'm not quite sure what year it is now.
It's right up there with unit dating and Doctor Who.
A little bit, yeah, because we at first it was all like with like Endgame and all that. It was like, okay, they're in 2024, but it's like now we're in 2024, and it's like, no, the MCU I think is a few years ahead of us now. So
it will be 2026 for the MCU.
The 2026 in the MCU, okay. It's getting hard to keep track. Yeah, and still in Westview. And is as we saw at the end of WandaVision, instead of destroying Agatha, after beating her, besting her in a one-on-one witches fight, she essentially put her and Westview kind of under another simulation type spell. But it's not as nearly as like big and all consuming as the hex from WandaVision, but everybody's still like playing their old personas, except for Agatha. Instead of being the nosy neighbor, she now thinks that she is a kind of road hard, weary, small town police detective whose son died and really seems to hate her job. So but it's through some encounters with this teenage boy, whose name we don't learn for a while, who Agatha just calls Teen, or Pet, or Toto. There's lots of nods to the Wizard of Oz in this. I think it's rather appropriate that we're covering this the same week that Wicked, the first half of the Wicked film, comes out. This person who she seemingly knows, played by Aubrey Plaza, named Rio, which I love Aubrey Plaza. I love Catherine Hahn too. Both of them, because if I remember correctly, maybe you could probably count on one hand the number of times that their characters came across each other in Parks and Recreation. So they have not really had a chance to play off each other. So to see kind of this Parks and Rec reunion, but with these different characters, and see these actresses do what they do best, which is choose scenery, because both of them are absolutely fantastic. And they play off each other so well. But it causes Wanda's little brainwashing spell to break, and we get that lovely sequence of her going backwards through all the Agatha outfits and designs from the different eras in WandaVision, to the point where she goes black and white, which that was so cool. And then she's finally free and naked. It's the first time we've seen a woman's naked behind in the MCU. And Catherine really wanted to do a nude scene. She really wanted to be naked. And it took some convincing for Kevin Feige to give the okay. It tells you a lot about Catherine. So, but now that she's free, in theory, she's free to do whatever she wants, but she doesn't have any power. So Agatha has to figure out how to get power back. And that's kind of our premise for this. She's going to go on some adventures. And I use that term very loosely. So, what did you guys think of how they like the overall premise and how they picked up kind of where it left off. Did just kind of feel to me it just kind of feel like, oh yeah, we're back in the WandaVision part of the MCU universe. Like, let's go. It hadn't felt like it'd been 3 years.
I agree with you, Rachel. I mean, I think that's exactly it, because I mean the feel of the show was very WandaVision, understand, because this is considered like a direct sequel to, WandaVision. They had to kind of keep similar beats to it, and I will also say, I'm sure we'll talk about it during the course of this review. But I felt so stupid by the end of it, not realizing what the actual plot was, because I'm like, it's WandaVision all over again. You should get what would happen at the end. And so I felt incredibly stupid that I didn't realize when we got our ultimate twist, knowing what we know and having seen WandaVision, this show very much following the same beats to a certain extent that WandaVision did. And that's why I felt incredibly stupid. I'm like, okay, I'll never be able to be a PI because I could not see the pattern. So it was I felt incredibly stupid about that. So my detective days were pretty much over once the twist was revealed. Other than that, I thought it was great. I mean, like you said, Catherine Hahn is brilliant in this, and she does such a fantastic job. And I will say, she can wear a hat and she looks good in a hat. Unlike, once again, myself, I wish I had a head for hats, but she looks gorgeous when she wears hats. So she's just beautiful. And just in general, I thought the story by and large was great. I mean, you're just looking at our premise. Granted, I think most of us kind of knew who Teen would probably end up being. But the other thing I wanted to bring up, because I don't know if we'll be bringing it up or not, was a huge gripe I had was with Funko, when they literally came out with the toys, already telling you who Teen was and who Rio Vidal, Aubrey Plaza's character, was. And that really irked me. I'm like, I hope that's not the case, but that was kind of a big gripe for me. It's like, kind of spoiled it. But other than that, it's a great show.
Yeah. And this is not the first time that Funko has done this, specifically with the MCU. I remember going into I think it was Civil War. They gave away Ant-Man going giant in a Funko. So it's like, Funko, what's going on there? Although when the chat we were talking about it, I kind of thought, well, maybe Funko, because I mean, obviously hindsight being what it is, it's kind of pretty obvious who Teen is.
Right.
I mean, it's not the same actor, but I mean, he's you'd almost think that he was related to the kid who plays young Billy. But it does seem kind of obvious just based on who he resembles, and especially if you know your comic book lore about William. So
yeah.
But
I mean, it's not as bad as the Oops with the Phantom Menace soundtrack.
Well, yes, that's true. That is very true.
I mean, it's up there, but
yeah. But I thought that maybe, maybe Funko was pulling like I kind of, because to me, whenever, especially with things regarding the MCU and stuff, you get the fan speculation, as if sometimes fans are really good about figuring stuff out without the need for any accidental leaks or anything. Just because Marvel does tend to stick to the source material enough. That, again, if you know your comic book lore, you can make 1 and 1 equal 2. But at the same time, sometimes I think that they allow certain things to be quote unquote leaked or spoiled, however you want to look at it, context, I'm sure, so that people are talking about that so that they don't see something else coming.
I
But
can see that.
I think maybe I may be giving them a bit too much credit in that. Maybe. I just thinking back to Multiverse of Madness, and like one of the last trailers or whatever, like while we didn't see him full body, they gave us Charles Xavier. They essentially told us that Professor X was going to be in it. It was the yellow chair. We saw an arm, and we were all like, "Oh yeah, Professor X," and we all, assumed that it was going to be Patrick Stewart, which it did end up being.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought maybe they gave us that so that when we got like Captain Carter and Black Bolt, that we would be like, oh my god, I didn't see that coming, because we were too focused on Professor X. But then there were some people that kind of presumed that Captain Carter was gonna make an appearance anyway, which I could kind of see that, especially thanks to What If. I did not see Black Bolt returning though, by any means, considering how badly the Inhuman series did. So yeah.
I think though the Rio character was more of a grave mistake, because none of us work at Funko or would know the goings on. My theory is they get a list of the characters that will be in the show, and they're maybe not told how pivotal these characters are. And so, like, this is what the character looks like. Go ahead and do the toys, and maybe they don't tell them this is a major plot point. And so they just go ahead and not knowing the plot of whatever show or movie they're doing. So just putting them out. So I think that's maybe, it could be just a lack of communication or specifics from, say, Marvel Studios to Funko, not telling them, wait on putting this particular character out because it is a major plot point in our story. For example.
Yeah. That is a possibility as well. I also know that well, granted, this is not this quite apples to apples, but there are some very smart people out there on the internet, or at least very clever people on the internet, that have figured out how to when there are websites where you're gonna get like releases or announcements and you have to wait for a certain date, that sometimes that stuff is already built into the website, it's just not published. And some people have figured out how to dig into the code and find that stuff and then post it on the internet. So in this case, I think it was just Funko specifically that kind of dropped the ball, much like the Star Wars soundtrack for episode 1. But yeah, it is a bit disappointing to get spoiled, but at the same time, not knowing context helps. So especially considering, in some cases we've been expecting certain characters to come back, like Wanda's kids, beyond Multiverse of Madness. Because in theory they should become part of the Young Avengers.
Yeah, that was
in theory. So it was just a matter of time. But again, some people, they want everything just to happen to them. Some people, as long as it's not something major, I'm okay with it. But that's just me. Like I said, just seeing like a Funko with like the little label on it, it's like, if I don't have context for that, it's like, oh, that's cool. That'll be interesting to see how that works.
Mm-hmm.
How this comes to pass. But that's again, that is me. So
You are more forgiving than me, Rachel.
yeah. Well, considering you don't watch trailers, you don't watch anything, so you try to be as blind as possible.
This is very true. No surprise, Daredevil is my favorite character. No pun intended.
Yeah. Yeah. So now, granted, I didn't see any of the Funkos. And even once I knew that was a thing, I didn't go looking for them. So, but that's, again, that is me. So did Holly, did you get spoiled at all? I know you I know you dig sometimes into merchandise a bit more than I do.
The Funkos this time around, I didn't. I'm being a little more choosier these days with what I'm. Basically, let's just say my Funko space is rapidly decreasing, and there's so much out there. It's just like, let me pick and let me choose if it's something I really, really want. But no, this one I was kind of staying away from spoilers, and I didn't have the dying need to go out and try to dig down, spoil myself to find out what was going to happen next. This one I just like, I think I'm going to let this one slow burn. Now, with the other half of the episode that we're going to be talking about for the other show, that one I was trying to find and coming up with Bubkiss. Like, I want answers. That Sheldon, who needs sleep? I want answers. Well, yeah. It's like, go to bed. You're not going to get answers.
Yeah.
Just deal with it.
Yeah. I mean, we've done an entire episode about, I think actually we've done 2 episodes about spoilers and how they can be a blessing and a curse to fandom. So, I mean, it's a very touchy subject for some people. And for me, like it's a case by case basis.
Yeah. Sometimes I don't mind getting spoiled, but then there's other times this is like, I absolutely do not want to get spoiled.
Yeah.
If you know something, keep the lip zipped.
Exactly. It's like, is Tom Holland talking? I'm putting my fingers in my ears. Thankfully he's nowhere involved in this, so we got that going for us. So yeah. So that's it's an interesting, aspect to it, the fact that, if you're looking in the right place, you might know some things that other people don't. That being said, even as we discovered more of these characters and their stories, even leading up to the final episode, I was just like, I don't know where this is going. Like, how exactly this was all going to play out, considering the characters that we're dealing with here. Obviously Agatha, very smart, almost to her own detriment. You've got the teen who knows a hell of a lot for seemingly, at first seemingly a nobody, just a fan of witchcraft or whatever. And then you've got the rest of our coven, which is quite the literal cast of characters. We got Deborah Jo Rupp returning as the former Mrs. Hart, they keep reminding us, both her and the other coven members, she's Sharon Davis. She's very much comic relief there. Not a witch by any means. So and of course, not having any magic, that means she's the first to die.
Right.
So and then we've got Sashir Zamata as Jennifer, aka Jen Kale, who is the potions expert, who has not been able to use her magic after being bound by someone, so she has used her knowledge in potions to supposedly become this beauty guru, and sell like this really high-end, supposed to be like really organic, natural, like skincare line that is really bogus because it uses petroleum products. It's not completely organic by any means. So, and let's see, Ali An as Alice Wu Gulliver, who is our protector witch, which in her mortal life, she's an ex-police officer and is working like mall security and doing a terrible job at it.
Mhm.
Her mother was a very famous witch who was a singer and recorded a version that became kind of mainstream, a version of the Witches Road song. And supposedly Alice's family is has a generational generational curse on them that causes each the woman in each generation to be haunted by this demon. So and and then I don't know how, even after seeing the trailers and stuff, that it just goes to show how terrible I am with faces and putting them with names. Patty LuPone, how I did not recognize that that's Patty LuPone is beyond me. Shame on me. Patty LuPone as Lila, who is a seer, and does divination, and she experiences time in a non-linear fashion. Her life is very wibbly wobbly, timey-wimey. It's a very much a big ball of stuff.
Yep.
So so that's our coven.
And they all have an axe to grind with Agatha, and yeah,
They do.
and it's sometimes, yeah, it's a well-intentioned axe to grind.
Yeah. Let's just say Agatha does not play well with others.
Oh no, she does not. She's more of
Ever.
a no. She's more of a lone wolf, and even
Yes.
then, that's a little dicey.
Yeah. She is a lone wolf that will bite the hand that feeds her if she thinks it will help her get ahead on her agenda. Very much. So it is very much a motley crew. But they all also definitely want something, and the idea is that if you walk the witch's road and make it to the end, that you will be given the thing you most want. So for for Jen, it's to remove the binding. For Alice, it's to end the curse. And for Lila, it is to understand really why she sees what she sees in the orders that she does. To things come better into focus. Obviously Agatha, she's looking for power. Rio, who ends up taking poor Sharon's place because they need an actual green witch. Wants bodies because she is death. And I don't just mean like a deadly witch. No, she is the embodiment of death, which is a character that I know a lot of people have been wanting to see since Thanos was brought into the picture. Because in the comic books, Thanos is in love with death, which, being played by Aubrey Plaza, I could just imagine her flirting with Brolin's Thanos. That would be hilarious. But that's the whole reason he uses the Infinity Stones to destroy half the universe, is to curry favor with death and kind of impress her, like, hey baby, look what I did for you, look at all that death, huh, you love me now?
Not impressed.
Not impressed. Yeah. So, and supposedly, according to the Russos, death was going to originally be part of Infinity War and Endgame, and then they realized it might be a bit too complicated to introduce a new character this late in the game. Which is probably smart. Making Thanos's reasoning being a very perverted altruism, I think, makes it, I think, made it for a slightly more interesting angle. But now we have Death, played by Aubrey Plaza, and it's fantastic. She's so good at this. Oh, she's so good. So the idea is you literally are walking a road, and every so often down the road you will come across a trial that is designed for everyone's supposed to work together as a team, which we know, considering this is a team that involves Agatha, that's not going to happen. But for them to solve the trial will require the abilities of one particular witch. So, and each place is designed to look and cater to each witch and like their personality and stuff, and I think that was really cool. So like the seaside, like Cape Cod house for the first one, which is Jen's trial, because she has to use her potions expertise to create an antidote after they all get poisoned by one. Which, I like how Sharon is all like, oh, bottle of wine, I'll take that. I'm like, I like the cut of your jib, lady. She's like, I don't know what I'm doing here, but look, wine. But she ends up dying because of the trial. So, which I recognized why she wasn't saved, because they were all questioning it afterwards, and I forget who it was. They were like, well, she had 2 glasses and we only gave her 1 dose of the antidote. And I'm like, no, you didn't put any of her hair in the potion. And each person who got poisoned had to put a piece of their hair in it. So it was never going to work without a piece of her hair in it. So I figured that out. Good for me.
Because usually that magic usually requires, like you said, a bit of physical whatever from the person that you need to.
Yeah, it usually requires some sort of no, the word I'm looking for is it usually requires some sort of physical connection to either the person that is creating said potion or the person it's intended to be used on. So in this case, it was every person that was going to be used on required a piece of their hair. So, but yeah, I like that. I very much like the fact that the space change, each house that they go into or whatever is themed, but then their costumes change. So there's so much cosplay opportunity in this show that I'm very excited to see what people come up with in conventions in the future. So so then the next trial is set in like the 70s, like hippie-ish recording studio, I guess. Which again, very cool costumes. But this is Alice's trial for them to figure out how to defeat the demon, and that is to perform again, work together, perform together her mother's version of the Ballad of the Witch's Road and mean it, like really feel the lyrics. So which is cool. I mean, the ballad in general, yeah, it kind of slaps to begin with, which again, this is Kristen Anderson Lopez and Robert Lopez, the same people that brought us Let It Go, among other things. So I would not put it past them to sorry, my husband came to take some of my dinner. Apparently he's not happy with it. Or there may be something wrong with it. So okay, fine. I was like, why are you taking my food?
And something suspicious, like that does not bode well, especially with what we're talking about.
Right?
Yeah, so I'm like, well, it tasted fine to me, but you know, what do
Chauncey?
I know? He's the cook, so he would know. That would make him the potions expert. Yep. So, but yes, Kristen Anderson Lopez, Robert Lopez, the same people that gave you all of the earworms from Frozen, including Let It Go. So of course, the Ballad of Witch's Road is also going to slap. And the kind of rock version, much longer, slightly different lyrics, but still, it slaps. So, and we hear a little bit more about Agatha and Rio's relationship. Apparently they used to be kissy girlfriend. Although I don't know if you can really call Death a girl. It's like she's just, her embodiment is female presenting. So I imagine Death really doesn't have a gender. But it's Aubrey Plaza. I mean, yeah, she identifies with a girl, so we're gonna go with that. So, but they do manage to perform the song, although the teen almost dies in the process. So and they kind of, although I think they wanted people to think that maybe teen is Nicholas, Agatha's lost son.
That could be.
But I never really got that vibe.
No.
That's who he might be. And even Rio at one point says to Agatha, you know that boy is not your son, right?
Right.
And we find out once Agatha names him that she's like, yeah, I knew who you were the entire time. She's like, I can smell a Max Moth from a mile away. But she still asks to make sure that Rio doesn't take the kid at this point. So I think Agatha has come to like him a little bit. But again, the costumes, that one. And then the next one. Speaking of Stranger Things, if you love the 80s and slasher movies, again, costumes, setting, wonderful. So we get very 80s murder cabin, a Ouija board because duh. And we get we kind of get the not so subtle hint that death is among them, and not just because someone has already died and someone's almost died, but literally death is among them. And we learn, I like that it had, the use of the Ouija board in this, that they make sure to actually talk about the rules that are actually the rules of how you're supposed to use a Ouija board. Like when you see them used in like TV shows and movies, you just kind of see like a group of people get around them. They put their hand on the thing and wait to see what happens. And, how it's used in most things, it's something bad. But they usually gloss over the part that like when you get done with it, you're supposed to say goodbye. Like there's actually rules with like communing with like spirits that you don't necessarily see discussed in popular culture. I just happen to like consume a lot about like the satanic panic and stuff like that, so I learn it via that direction. I've never used a Ouija board in my entire life. Knowing your guys' taste, like mine, I imagine this was probably, as far as look and design, was probably a personal favorite. I know it is for me. Very Stranger Things-esque. I think I even said that in the chat. I'm like, what the Stranger Things is going on here?
And very much an 80s pajama or slumber party for sure.
Yes. It is very much so. And we get brooms, kind of. Granted, they're just sticks, giant sticks, but we get to see them fly. And discuss a little bit about the origin of witches on brooms. So I like, if you're kind of a fan of lore, there's some good info in here. They definitely know what they're talking about. They definitely looked into the actual lore of some of these things and make sure that they were using the accurate info. So kudos to the writers for that.
And I'm also glad they explained to us why they couldn't use the brooms to fly all the way to the end of the road. It's kind of like the eagles in the Lord of the Rings. So I'm kind of glad that they explained to us why they just can't hop on the brooms and fly all the way to the end.
Yeah. There's also a nice little fun little nod at one point that because we encounter Agatha's mother's ghost. And that's a toxic relationship if I ever saw one.
And another Wizard of Oz reference, and her name is Evanora.
Yes. Yep. Very much so. And then our next episode 6 is where we finally find out how Billy Maximoff is essentially alive, still with us. So we get to learn all about William, who is this kid, this teenager, 13, because he's having his bat mitzvah, which I was asking Nick all sorts of questions. Not so much specifically about the ceremony and like the chanting and all that. I had a few questions about that. But like the party afterwards, because I like the whole. I was like the idea of having like a fortune teller and stuff at a kid's benefits. It's like that. That just seemed kind of, I don't know, like contradictory to the Jewish faith.
Yeah, It was a thing they decided to do. I mean, I get disco parties during the day because you're 13. I mean, I attended disco parties during the day because you couldn't go out at night because you were too young. But yeah, a fortune teller usually wouldn't have a fortune teller tent at your bar mitzvah party. I mean, I don't know, maybe it's different, in other countries, but usually not. But I will say that as a Jewish man myself, I really appreciated that they did their homework. I mean, I'm sure, I mean, unless, they did either they did their research or they're actually Jewish writers or folks they work with who they know are Jews, and so they know how bar mitzvah works. But I appreciate the fact they used the chants and the prayers that are literally recited when it comes to either a boy having his bar mitzvah or a girl having her bat mitzvah. So I thought that was great. They made it authentic.
Yeah, I was just like, this theme just seems like it doesn't jive with organized religion. Not necessarily Judaism, just organized religion in general. Like, like I don't think you're gonna have this type of theme after somebody gets like their first communion in Catholicism. But hey, but Williams in general seems to be a huge fan of like witchcraft and magic and that sort of thing. So maybe his parents were just like, oh, he just kind of likes card tricks and stuff like that. So we'll just humor him. Yeah, because that's kind of like what he's into, I guess.
I think it might also be a homage to The Omen as well, because of the fact that in the first Omen movie, or actually the very first Omen movie that came out, that when it is revealed that Damien is the son of Satan, it's very much happens when he at his birthday party goes with his nanny or his mom into a fortune telling tent, and that's when it's given signs that he might very well be the Antichrist. And so I think they might have been homaging The Omen there as well, since we're doing all these kind of horror homages, like we had The Exorcist in the previous episode, and here we're doing The Omen. So I think it might have been. I might be wrong, but I think it might have been homaging The Omen.
Yeah, I could kind of see that too. So, and it also makes it easier to show that William has encountered the other members of the coven. And specifically Lila, that would be kind of hard to like, why would a 13-year-old boy come across a fortune teller? So especially in New Jersey. I mean, Brittany, do they have fortune? I'm sure they've got fortune tellers in New Jersey.
They do, but I can see it more like in the show, like Georgie Shore. I can see it there more.
Yeah, I was gonna say that seems like something like if you were gonna go like to a touristy area, that would be something that people would be like, oh yeah, let's get a fortune told. That would be funny, ha 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 ha. So, but yeah, we learned that William is really big into magic and stuff, and he has his bar mitzvah, and then he lives in Eastview, which the hex doesn't go that far, but because the hex is so large, the people in Eastview are aware of it. It's kind of hard to miss. And then the day that it starts to collapse, William is in the car with his parents trying to get away in case it goes badly. And they ultimately crash, and William is killed in the car crash. But the exact same time that William dies is when Billy and Tommy, that version of them that we know from WandaVision, disappear, and their souls go off to try to find a new vessel. And in this case, Billy enters William's body, and he now has the memories of both. And he kind of is struggling with that because he's like, I'm William, but I'm Billy. It's kind of probably it helps and also hurts that their name, like Billy, can be a shortening of William. So his name's not that different, but different, different enough. So he goes searching for answers. His boyfriend, is there right by him. Even as Billy's powers start to manifest, because Billy is, among other things, he's a mind reader. And he ends up coming across like a online forum or something, and connecting with some people that are also, because Agatha's face keeps popping up around places, very much like when in Rose. It very much reminded when Billy was doing the searching and kept finding Agatha's face and things. I'm like, this is just like Doctor Who and Rose.
Yeah, Bad
when they're
Wolf.
finding the Ninth
The
Doctor's
moment.
face all sorts of
Yeah.
places, including the Titanic.
Yep.
So apparently both the Ninth Doctor and Agatha Harkness were on the Titanic. Someone figure out how to write fanfic for that to make that work in both universes. So he decides to meet up with one of these fellow kind of conspiracy folks with his boyfriend as backup. And it turns out to be Ralph Boner. So, oh my goodness, that's a face I didn't think we were going to see again.
Great to see Evan Peters again.
Yeah, it was really good to see Evan again. So, and to see that poor Ralph has not recovered well from his time under Wanda's slash Agatha's spell, because he was more under Agatha's direction, not Wanda's, because Agatha was fully aware of what was going on, but she needed a way to weasel in with the Maxwell family even more. So she found this guy, convinced him that to make him think that he's Pietro, but at the same time, being also being kept captive at Agatha's house. So apparently Agatha did things to him.
And I'm sure that as lovers of physical media, we can all relate to him being upset about losing his whole Blu-ray collection.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes. Oh, bye. That's so funny though. Yeah, because he was just like, I mean, he looks like the type of like conspiracy theory kind of wacko person when you think of like somebody that's really into conspiracy theories. He's like, just he's just but yeah, his time during WandaVision, it messed him up. So he's gonna need some serious therapy. But that was fun to see. So then Billy / William decides get the idea to go to Westview and see what he can find. And that's how he ends up in Agatha's house as we see towards the beginning of the series. Not quite, I guess it would be not quite the penultimate episode, but the penultimate episode, which is Lillian's trial, which requires her to do tarot, which is a form of divination, and it's set in a kind of medieval type castle, and everybody as dressed as a famous so Agatha becomes the Wicked Witch of the West from the Wizard of Oz, green skin and everything, and she's like, she was modeled after me, which I can kind of see that actually. Poor Billy's dress is Maleficent. Lillian is more Glinda-ish. and Jen is the old hag version of the evil queen from Snow White. Because in the process of everything, they have lost Alice. So, but this is where Lillian's wibbly wobbly, timey wimey flash forwards, flashbacks that we've kept seeing throughout the series are finally given context. So that while we still don't see stuff in order, it is now shown in a way that we're like, oh, okay, this refers to that, and that is what refers to this, and this is how this is connected to that. So for it not being completely linear or chronological, I thought it was very cool and fairly easy to follow.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, being a Doctor Who fan, that might help.
Yeah.
Anytime you're talking about time travel, you need to seasoned Doctor Who watcher, and they'll be like, I got it. So, now, interesting fact about this episode: the swords, all real. Every single one of those swords that fell down, all real. Obviously, very highly choreographed, so that nobody accidentally got impaled. But yeah, all of those swords were real. Which made that, I would be terrified, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, they're not CGI. They're hung by piano wire and numbered, and they choreographed their falling beforehand and then set the actors accordingly. So, but yeah, that and some of those swords are kind of famous. So if you know your Conan the Barbarian, you might recognize one of them. So
Mm-hmm.
Lily's tarot reading, quite accurate. Again, the writers done their research. Gotta love it. So but for this, it is also her turn to die. But in this case, she sacrifices herself to save the others. Which is something that the others were not did not have that choice. So, but I like that I'll hold that opinion to the end. So that also leads to me to one of my little quibbles, but I will say that. So now, second to last, the end of the road, and the Jen gets her wish and manages to escape. Agatha helps Billy not necessarily actually fulfill his wish because he wants to find his brother, but it gives him the information he needs, some of the information he needs to help to find his brother. And then Agatha gets some power, and then gets some more power thanks to Billy. And we get a lovely knockdown, drag out fight between her and Rio / Death, which is very fabulous. And turns out that Agatha might actually give a crap about someone besides herself. Because I mean, in true Agatha fashion, it seemed like she was going to sacrifice the kid. She was going to sacrifice Billy, to get what she wants and to get Rio / Death off of her case. But no, ultimately, Agatha sacrifices herself, which we find out in the very next episode that, according to her, that was a very calculated move on her part. But the very last episode we get get a lot of Agatha backstory, including her the birth of Nikki, her son, and their time together before she made a bargain with death, Rio, because he was supposed to die essentially in childbirth, and Rio ended up giving her some time, but of course it's not enough, and eventually she takes him as a little boy, and we see how that makes Agatha very hardened. Not that she was Mother of the Year or super softy beforehand, and how she invents the legend of the Witch's Road, because it never actually was a thing. But it turns out by the time we get to quote unquote modern times that Billy's belief in it is so strong that he actually creates the actual road. And it turns out that while Agatha, yes, is dead, she is a ghost, and she kind of digs it. Which does not surprise me any whatsoever. So, and it allows us to keep Catherine Hahn, which I love.
Yes.
Yes. So, but yeah, I mean, it's not tied up perfectly with a bow at the end, but it's not, again, it's not supposed to, because in theory, Billy and Tommy are supposed to become part of the Young Avengers, which means we've got to find Tommy at some point. All we know is that he went into the body of a boy that was drowning somewhere. And that's whose body he took over, but where exactly that may be, TBD. So, but yeah, that's Agatha All Along in a nutshell. So I do have some questions. Not quite as much as Only Murders, but I do have some questions. One, who is Nikki's father? Like, there's never even any indication of who Agatha's son's father is. And then my, not so much question, but like thing that I take issue with is the idea of the Salem 7. Because they mention them at the very beginning. They're supposed to be like the 7 members of Agatha's cousin. I think they're supposed to be the members of Agatha's coven that tried to kill her along with her mother.
They're the descendants of the first coven that Agatha murdered. Yeah.
So they're supposed to be like this troop, kind of like the Ringwraiths in Lord of the Rings. They're supposed to be like this evil force that's coming for Agatha because they want revenge and all of this stuff. And while they like show up a couple of times, they're never really a threat to Agatha. And then Lillian takes them out.
They were rather underwhelming as adversaries.
They were very underwhelming. So I almost wonder, like, what was the point? Other than it gives Lillian a good heroic, like, way out.
That was probably the only thing.
Right, but they never really seemed like a threat in the first place.
It kind of reminds me of what happened with Miss Marvel in the series, where we had the Djinns and they lasted for like 2 seconds and they were killed off instantly, immediately. It seemed like that kind of thing. And apparently, Rachel, to answer your question, Jack Schaefer, the showrunner for the show, was asked this about who Nicholas Scratch's father might be. She said that apparently Death and Agatha are Nicholas's parents. So I guess Nicholas was conceived through magic.
Okay.
I could see that.
Yep.
Well, and again, like I was saying
earlier, to jokingly tongue in cheek say Asmodeus, because everybody wants him to him to show up.
Yeah, the other thing everybody's hoping is that it might have been Mephisto, but
because he got named dropped.
Sorry. I think that meant Mephisto, not Asmodeus. Sorry.
But yeah, apparently, according to the showrunner, his parents were Rio and Agatha.
Which again, death, probably not, technically not male or female, so it is possibly that at some point death took on a male forward presenting image with
Could be.
parts to match, maybe.
Also, because they only call her Death here, where in the comics she's Lady Death. So maybe they
Right.
decided to not give her the lady in her name because of the fact they wanted to maybe make it more of a genderless character.
But I just wonder, like, if Death is Nicholas's other parent, when we see Rio come the first time when Agatha's in labor and grants her more time, and then when that time is up, or it's like in that exchange somewhere, like Rio could have said something like, well, it's my child too, or something that maybe would have filled in that gap instead of leaving it to the showrunner to have to explain that, you know?
Maybe they had something set up, but I guess maybe for time they had it end up on the cutting room floor, or we might get a reveal later down the line, because I'm sure that now they introduced Death, who's a huge part of the Marvel universe, at least in the comics. It's one of the biggest, most powerful beings out there. So I'm sure I'm hope that if we even get a second season of Agatha All Along, that we will, that might be explained. I mean, I know that Vision Quest has been confirmed, and that might play into it to a certain extent, but unless we get a second season, but I'm sure eventually it will be explained, other than Jack Schaefer coming out and saying, yeah, they're his parents.
Yeah, because otherwise it's just like, okay, so if Death is Nicholas's other parent, and then Death took Nicholas, does that mean that Nicholas didn't go into the afterlife like others would, but maybe has been brought up by Death? So maybe he could come back?
Is this kind of like a Hades and Persephone thing, or like Orpheus?
Because I mean, Nicholas Scratch is a character.
Correct. He's an agent of Mephisto.
Yeah. Again, and then Mephisto got name dropped. So interesting. Oh, or maybe Nicholas could come into the MCU as the proper Mephisto.
That could be a possibility too. I could see that.
Ideas. So anyway, thoughts? Anybody else have any like niggling questions that they're like, I wish I got the answer to this, or questions, concerns, comments before we move on to the Arconia, where we have lots more questions.
I just want to ask you guys a question, just an opinion. What did you make of the fact that now apparently we have Billy and Agatha teaming up to find Tommy, and Agatha being Billy's spirit guide, having her backstory, knowing what a horrible mother she was, using her son to get more power and inventing everything. So what do you guys think of this should we say unholy alliance between
that it is. That it is. I think maybe what Marvel has done with Agatha, specifically with this, because because once we got the big reveal in WandaVision, it was like, oh, this is a whole other ball of wax. But by giving us backstory of Agatha and then seeing where she is now, I don't think Agatha could ever be like fully redeemed necessarily and become like a quote unquote good guy, but I wonder if this is Marvel's way of bringing her closer to her comic book character, where she's not evil, but she's morally gray. You know, she's kind of Deadpool-esque, you know?
Kind of an anti-hero. Yeah, I can see that.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Where it's like, yeah, you know, obviously, you know, you don't want her, like, you know, watering your house plants while you're on vacation. But when push comes to shove, she is capable of doing the right thing. And also, I think maybe there's if I were her, I'd almost feel maybe a little indebted to Billy. Because while, yeah, she did get her power back, she wasn't as powerful until Billy let her feed off of him. So she wouldn't be, I mean, yes, she's dead, but she's a ghost and she seems to be okay with that, at least right now. That her current situation isn't all that bad. So maybe she's willing to help out this kid that she's seemingly grown to care for a little bit. I mean, you know, unless you're just an absolute monster. Again, this is my humble opinion as somebody who absolutely does not want to be a mother and has decided not to become a mother, at least of humans. Corgis are their own thing. Who decided not to become a mother of humans because I know I would be terrible at it. That doesn't mean that I can't care for children.
Mm-hmm.
And there are children in my life that I do care for. So I don't think Agatha is completely heartless. I think maybe she was dealt a really bad hand or 12. But she's not the all-encompassing evil character that I think some others in the MCU are.
I think morally gray is the right way to put it. And then the other thing I wanted to ask guys was when we got the big reveal that it was Billy all along, with him literally creating Witch's Road from, you know, things that he was influenced by, you know, that we see in his room, you know, the stews and all the other stuff, very much mirroring Wanda creating Westview based on her love of the shows that she watched on the VHS as a kid. Were you guys happy with that reveal? Did you see it coming? And yeah, what did you think of that?
Well, like I said, hindsight being 2020. I mean, I didn't see the fact that the Witch's Road was not an actual thing until Wanda said, or until Agatha said so. Because I just kind of thought, you know, that makes sense that there would be something like this, you know, as far as, you know, witchcraft lore in the MCU.
And it does exist in the comics. It is an actual road.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
The fact that he made it all up, that totally makes sense. You know, I think that just goes to show that the vivid imagination that Wanda had does not fall far from the tree. That while you know, pretty much everything we saw in WandaVision was technically made up, that it wasn't just like it was all an illusion, because Wanda, I think, literally put parts of herself into creating the hex, and that's what's living on in her kids and that version of Vision that is still out there. That her feelings and her personality and how that affects the people that she loves, both real and created. I think it goes to show that Billy and Tommy were never really just made up things, that they truly were her children. And at the very least, the apple doesn't fall far from the tree when it comes to imagination and being able to create things, at least as far as Billy is concerned.
And that's why I felt like such an idiot, because there's that very telling moment that, to paraphrase, that Agatha says to Billy, it's like, you're definitely your mother's son. You have the same tell. And I was like, oh, that makes so much sense now. And that's when I was kicking myself. I'm like, yeah, I should have realized when she said that this was all created by Billy.
I think that's cool though. So
No,
I really think that's cool. And it also makes you wonder going forward. It's going to make I think it's going to make it harder to trust what you see.
Mm-hmm.
So,
which very much reflects the time these days with AI. Now these days you don't know what's real and what's not. So I guess it's going to
true.
reflect in our shows as well.
That is very true. That is very true. And it also goes to show just how powerful both Wanda and her kids are.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that they're all extremely powerful. So, and not ones to be trifled with, which, you know, again, if they become part of the Young Avengers, that's a good thing. Yeah, that's going to be very handy to have someone that powerful on, in theory, the good side. But getting him there, it's going to be a walk in the park. And then there's still the idea that Wanda could come back at some point.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they even mentioned it in this. Like, did you see a body? So,
and they also said the Scarlet Witch is dead and not Wanda Maximoff. So I guess that could be seen as well as something. Hopefully, Elizabeth Olsen ultimately decides to come back, because I know she's on the fence about it from what I've read in interviews. So hopefully, she will come back.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think, you know, if I was in her shoes, I think it would ultimately come down to the story and how they're going to make it work, considering where we are in the MCU and where we seem to be going. You know, how does bringing back not necessarily the Scarlet Witch but Wanda Maximoff, how does that fit into the greater MCU where we're headed? So
that is a good point.
Yeah. Anything else? Gone? All right. So moving along to Only Murders in the Building. Season 4. Only Murders Does Hollywood.
Mm-hmm.
So, of course, our listeners know how much Holly and I really love this show. So, I'm still trying to convince Chauncey to watch it. He's not yet.
Chauncey, come on.
Yeah, I know.
Buddy, I think give it a few episodes. I think he'll be right there with us.
Yeah. So, and Nick, remind me, you came in a little later, right? You haven't been watching from the very beginning?
No, I had not. I mean, the buzz was certainly there when it came to you guys and other friends of mine mentioning that it was such a great show. I mean, I will say, because at first I was worried it was more on the comedy side than anything else. And I'm very picky with my comedies as I am with my musicals. And so I was like, if this is completely comedic, I might not be interested in it. So I sat down and watched it, I usually give a show 3 episodes to then decide whether I'm going to stay with it or not. And by the time episode 3 came out of season 1, the third episode of season 1, I was like, yeah, this is definitely my bag. And so I just went on watching it. And
I know.
And I was genuinely impressed, especially with Selena Gomez, who I did not know could act this well.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. That's something I think that comes up every time we talk about a season of this. Also, the fact that, you know, I remember, I think it was a D23 Expo, whatever the D23 Expo was before the series started, where they announced that this was going to be a thing. And I remember at the time thinking, that sounds kind of stupid. How is that going to work? And they're like, Selena Gomez with Martin Short and Steve Martin. I'm like, well, I like Martin Short and Steve Martin, especially together.
Mm-hmm.
Selena Gomez. But then when the series started and I started watching it, of course, you know, I'm intrigued. One, it's Steve Martin, Martin Short, especially Martin Short. I love Martin Short. But then it's, you know, the premise of they're podcasters. I'm like, oh, hello. It's not often that podcasters get representation like this. So it's like this and the new Ghostbusters. We got that going for us. And so, yeah, I started watching, and I love a good murder mystery. Y'all
Same
know
here.
that too, and our listeners know that too. And I especially love a good murder mystery where I can't figure it out way before we actually get the reveal. Because there's been times where I have done that, and then we get to the end. It's when we were talking about the Sixth Sense, and how, like, with the so far the 2 Knives Out movies, I haven't been able to figure out the conclusion before the movie is over. And the same with the Agatha Christie, the new Poirot, with Kenneth Branagh, mostly because I've not read the source material with Agatha Christie. But even then, so, and this season in particular, man, they had me like, I would think
I
I figured
know.
something out, and then they'd give us new information. I'm like, I was completely off base.
There were so many red herrings. It was just like,
Yes.
I was to the point where I'm like, okay, I'm not making any guesses until the very final episode and stuff gets laid out on the table.
Yeah, because I mean, obviously, when we get our dead body that kicks off the entire thing, we get a little bit of information, and that gives
Right.
us to something to work off of, and we may make guesses or assumptions about some of the circumstances that led to this dead body.
Mm-hmm.
So when last season ended with Saz getting shot, considering her entire career essentially has been being Charles's body double / stunt person, I, like they say, actually, when the season starts, is everyone kind of assumed that Charles was the intended victim, and they just mistook Saz for Charles.
Mm-hmm.
But it quickly turns out that that's not the
The
case.
case, no. And that came up left field with what, I think like 2 episodes to go with that little reveal. Yeah.
Yeah. There was just like, I mean, the whole thing with them. Yeah, I understand that they wanted to have some change in scenery. Try not to think about it logically. How many times they probably flew from Los Angeles to New York,
Right.
during the course of the time period that this takes place.
Accruing a lot of miles, I will say.
He's got all 3 of them got a lot of airline miles. Although I imagine that the studio paid for a lot of that. I love why. Okay, first question: why are they at Paramount when this is on Hulu? This is a Disney production. Why are they at Paramount?
Good question.
Other than
are we, is there something that they're trying to subconsciously tell us? And that one little meme with Mickey wearing a certain MCU glove with other companies,
or maybe it's just the fact that Paramount could take a joke, because we learned that with Sunset Boulevard.
Right.
Some of the big studios, they could take a joke. Maybe Paramount was all like, we've got Star Trek and that's all we've got going for us. So yeah, sure. Go ahead. Use our studio.
I mean, it's free publicity, right?
Yeah. But it's just like, we let you why is it not Fox? Why is it not I don't know.
We lend you Patrick Stewart on the rare occasion, so yeah, go ahead.
Yeah. I guess. I don't know. Well, I've yet to see someone explain why Paramount, but hey, it's all good. In the grand scheme of things, that is the least important question I have. No, but the idea of the some studio taking their podcast and trying to turn it into a movie is interesting. Gets the gang out of New York for at least a little bit. Takes them to the place where Saz was living and working, so that works well with the murder mystery. Gives us an opportunity for other cameos and or people playing sometimes playing fictionalized versions of themselves, in some cases playing somebody completely different. Which is another thing I love that they do with the show. That like you will see faces you recognize. Sometimes they're playing themselves. Sometimes they're playing in this case, you got Zach Galifianakis, Eugene Levy, and Eva Longoria playing fictionalized versions of themselves. And you've got you got Molly Shannon playing Bev Mellon, who fantastic. You got some recognizable, some recognizable character actors. You got Richard Kind, who's a fantastic character actor. You've got Kumail Nanjiani, I'll get that, who is actually also part of the MCU because he's in the Eternals. So he's also in Star Wars, in Obi-Wan Kenobi. So
and also in Ghostbusters, wasn't he in that too?
The new one, was that him? I think that was him. Yeah, actually. Yeah, the guy with the grandmother or whatever. Yes, that was him. You got Oscar winning Divine Joy Randolph, fresh off her Oscar win for The Holdovers. Back is Detective Donna Williams, who is a huge theater nerd.
I was so glad when she showed up because I'm like, I hope she shows up and like, yes, we need you.
Yes. She has become playing into the stereotype of shows like this where you've got people playing detective who aren't actual detectives, but then you have an actual cop that constantly finds themselves having to work alongside the amateur. And frustrated because sometimes the amateur shows them up. Divine Joy Randolph, her character definitely is like sometimes wonders how did I end up working with these crazy people?
It's like, you guys, you stumble into the most crazy crap, get yourselves in trouble, but then you wind up helping us solve it, but still you're suspects, but then you help this. This is like, well, and in this safe, but
well, in this case it's outside of her purview, so there's only so much she can do because it ends up going to the feds, so which makes it out of her hands. But she's like, you guys have proven yourself to be pretty adept at figuring these things out, so here, I'm gonna pass you a little info on the DL.
And it was also great to have John McEnroe. I love that the cameo that he made.
Oh my god,
that was yes, I completely forgot about that.
With Oliver in the tennis cap.
Yep. And so of course you have
John
to have John
McEnroe's like, John McEnroe is like, what do you think, this is funny? And then he starts getting all upset. And I was like, oh my god, yes, this is fabulous, yes.
And then my other two favorites were, of course, you actually finally got Scott Bakula showing up. And of course,
yes.
They've only been name dropping him for since last season.
And of course, he's looking for Zaz.
Because Zaz is like, sorry, I got to go back to LA. I'm doubling for Bakula. What I don't know. Because I think his run on NCIS is done. So whatever.
And Enterprise is no more.
And then I didn't think we were actually going to get him. I thought we were just going to get the voice, but we actually do get Ron Howard.
Oh yes.
Oh, and that was something. Yeah. Oops, you muted Nick.
Yeah.
Oh no, and then the other one I wanted to add was a personal favorite of mine, which is Taya Leone. I was really happy to see her.
Oh yes.
They're very briefly, but I'm a huge fan of Taya's.
Yeah. like I had posted in chat, I'm just like, I'm thinking she's going to play into the next season. And then I'm wondering if we are going to get cameos from 2 other people that have ties to her from a certain FBI Fox show that is no longer running. The truth is out there.
Yeah. Maybe we will find out. So yeah. So then we learn about so in the process of them trying to figure out who killed Taz, we learn about the residents in the other side of the Arconia. We got our Eastenders, and our Westenders, the Westies. And apparently the Westies are illegally rent controlling their apartments. Which again, red herring, turns out to not necessarily be a thing. Make new friends though, in the process. Some fairly ridiculous, pretty ridiculous comedic bits, if you ask me, with some of the stuff, because you've got our Arconia trio, who are old hat at this, and then you've got the 3 Hollywood actors who are supposed to be playing versions of our podcasting trio, and trying to learn about who their characters are, and all those things, but also try to pretend to be amateur murder solvers as well. So, but it's nice to get some fresh blood in there. Like I said, Richard Kind, Kamal. Here's a fun little tie-in to Gold Standard. One of the other Westies, Inez, played by Daphne Rubin Vega, because of course this is set in New York and they filmed somewhat in New York, so getting people that have Broadway experience is really easy because they're right there. But she is the original Mimi in Rent.
I did not know this. There you go.
Yes,
very cool.
That may or may not be important on the Gold Standard here at some point later this month.
Then again, I only watched Rent yesterday and only knew of his existence like 2 days ago. So there you go. But...
yeah. We got Melissa. We got Melissa McCarthy as Doreen, Charles's sister.
Oh yes. That was an interesting episode.
That was.
Yeah, she's a horny puppy and then some.
Oh my goodness. Oh my, that was perfect though. That is so the right role for Melissa though.
And then just her knockdown drag out with Meryl Streep's character.
I know. I did not know I needed to see a cat fight between Melissa McCarthy and Meryl Streep.
A fight for the ages, definitely.
I know.
I mean, it almost kind of ranks up there with the
fighting over Oliver of all people.
It kind of ranks up there with the Death Becomes Her Meryl Streep Goldie Hawn fight, a little bit in a way. Yeah,
maybe that wasn't inspired by that. I wonder.
I imagine,
because I just kind of got that, that vibe.
Could be. Another face that I did not think we were going to see again, but everybody loves him. Paul Rudd.
Yes. I'm just like, wait a minute. Aren't you supposed to be? Oh, okay. We're going with a very bad accent, but it works.
Yeah, very bad Irish accent.
Oh yes. But it was great to see Paul again. I was glad that he was back.
It was.
We agree on a lot.
Like Paul Rudd. Everybody loves Paul Rudd.
I didn't know this was going to happen.
Yeah, so instead of obviously he died previous season, but now he's back playing his character's stunt double, Glenn Stubbins. And we get to learn all about the stunt actor side of Hollywood, or at least as far as in this universe is concerned. And this whole thing with the directors of this movie and the Westies and and this guy named Dudenoff, who was also he was a professor of film, and all the Westies were students of his, and all this stuff that, again, red herrings all over the place. The whole Dudenoff thing doesn't really tie into it, other than the fact that Dudenoff finding out that he's dying and wants to go on his own terms, so he unalives himself, and at his behest has the Westies dispose of him in the incinerator of the Arconia. And it just so happens that he too also had some artificial joints, much like Saz. Saz was more like Wolverine by the end there, with the amount of parts that she had replaced.
Oh yeah.
From, what was it, Belgium?
Yeah, I think so.
Bulgaria it was.
Bulgaria.
Yeah.
That they had gotten the same artificial joint from Bulgaria. But then there's this whole thing with Saz had a protege at some point, and then Oliver and excuse me, that Oliver and Meryl Streep's character, like, their relationship is, they're trying to do the long distancing because she got this job in LA on the Grey's Anatomy spinoff, apparently. And there's some miscommunication there, and Loretta. And it all comes together when we find out that Saz was killed by her protege, which turns out to be the guy that they thought was the scriptwriter for the Only Murders in the Building podcast film, but it turns out that the script is actually Saz's, but he really, really, really wanted to make it as a writer in Hollywood, so he stole it from Saz. Saz found out and was going to go to the studio, I guess, and talk to Molly Shannon's character or whatever and try to get it all straightened out, but he couldn't handle that. So he followed her from LA to New York, and because she wanted to go see Charles first, and see her friends. And get the okay, because she was using their names and likenesses and all that fun stuff. And he was like, oh, I can't have that. So he follows her to New York, uses Dudenau's old apartment as his perch, and uses the sharpshooting skills that apparently was taught to him by his father, because that's what he wanted his son to grow up, is to be a marksman assassin instead of a writer, to kill Saz. And then it snowballs from there, and he ends up having to kill Glenn Stubbins as well. He accidentally shoots Zach Galifianakis, but Zach ends up being fine.
And then somewhere along the line, whatever he does kind of falls on the blowback to the two directors.
Right, yeah, because they wear the same shoe.
Yeah.
And it is ironic that the actor played a sniper in Civil War, the movie Civil War from the same year. Jin Hai, that was the role that he played before he was in Murders in the Building. So interesting coincidence there.
Yeah. But it's just like, and then Oliver and Loretta get married, which is nice, because Oliver wasn't sure that he could make it down the aisle again without something terrible happening. Then it turns out Loretta is actually moving to New Zealand. And Oliver's like, I'll go with you. I'll be there in a few weeks. After you get settled and have a place to live and all that fun stuff. And then Charles's Jan has escaped from prison. Can't forget that Jan has escaped from prison, because after dating Charles, Jan was dating Saz, which is cool, other than the fact that Jan is completely nutso. But she's been hiding in the maze of walkways and hidden passages inside the Arconia, and out of snacks she finds in Charles's apartment when he's not home. But she ends up saving our trio by shooting Rex, because she's also a sharpshooter. She gets rearrested. Oliver and Loretta get married. And then Sophia shows up, approaching Charles and Mabel to hire them as PIs against her husband's disappearance. They turn her down. And they later find Lester, the doorman, dead in the fountain. Dun dun dun. Which, yes, of course, we're gonna end with a dead body, because then that gives us a reason to come back. It's a shame that it's Lester, especially considering Lester had been saying that he had married his wife in the same courtyard that Oliver and Loretta get married in, and he thinks that fountain is good luck. Obviously not for Lester now. But which I'm fine with that. I fully expect every season to end with a dead body of some sort, and that's going to help feed into our next season. I've been racking my brain since this ended, and even after talking in the chat and talking with Holly, like when we're not recording, I'm still racking my brain. There's something about the way this was wrapped up that's not sitting well with me. And like I said, can't for the life of me articulate what it is, but there's just something.
Because we had all those nice little the threads tie up and endings with the Dudenoff and the group that, is living off his social security and that.
Yeah.
And we find about his story. So that gets tied up. The whole thing with Zaz gets tied up. We've got, the quasi-happy ending for Loretta and Oliver. So we got that tied up. But this is brand new. So I'm thinking that's probably why it's not setting right with us. And we don't know a whole much about Lester. So that's kind of like, okay, who has it out for him and why? And I had brought something up in the chat that maybe Taya Leone's character is somehow related to Lester. And
well, because
she could be 100% wrong.
Yeah. Well, she says when she's talking to Charles and Mabel that her missing husband apparently has ties to the Arconia.
Right.
And as far as we know, Lester has been the doorman of the Arconia for a long, long time.
Right.
So he might have known
head gatekeeper
her husband. Yeah. So he knows a lot. He's the doorman is one of those jobs where it's like,
if you want to know the dirt, ask the
doorman. If you want to know the dirt, ask the doorman. Ask the person that most people kind of ignore and sometimes don't even consider, like a person worth acknowledging.
It's like the bartender or the taxi driver,
Exactly. Yeah. So, I mean, for me, I don't necessarily think that's it. I think you're right. I do think Taya Leone's character and her missing husband are gonna connect, I think, to Lester's death.
Also, because you don't cast somebody like Taya Leone for a 5-minute cameo, I doubt it.
Right,
exactly.
Yeah. And she's probably going to be a regular. Yeah, she'll probably be a regular next season. I think for me, it's like I'm glad that the whole Westy Dudenoff thing did get tied up, but other than the fact that they made good potential suspects at one point, other than Dudenoff also getting his body being cremated in the incinerator, they're kind of unnecessary. Like we had this, like it's not like it's a B plot. Like in the first season, when we're trying to figure out who killed Tim, there's like that whole like kind of side plot with was it Nathan Lane's and his son getting like
Right. Yeah.
the gold teeth and stuff from bodies. Like from the from bodies being cremated and stuff like that. But it was like a minor thing, like side plot that didn't really affect the bigger plot. The whole Dudenoff like Westy thing almost seems like it could have been its own thing. And it almost seems like it was the fact that it's not really connected other than an artificial joint and then making some new friends. I don't know. It just seems like it was kind of like it almost seems like to me, it almost seems like they wrote so much into Dudenoff and the Westies and all of this stuff that when it came to our actual killer Rex, like they almost didn't know how to justify him being the killer.
Or maybe we're going to have more Westy involvement because of Taleone's character, and they're trying to build in backdoor backplot, so we trust them a little bit more. I mean, I don't know. I'm spitballing here because we're kind of into uncharted territory. I mean, they are sticking to their formula, but they're kind of modifying it and twisting it, and I'm here for the ride, but it's just like,
yeah. But to me, I think part of it is the whole conclusion with Rex just seems like
that was
it almost seems like it almost seems like it was too easy. Like they wrote themselves into a corner or something, and they're like, well, he really wanted to be a famous Hollywood writer, but his dad didn't like him. His dad wanted to be him to be an assassin like him,
right?
Which is like left field, but okay, whatever.
Or maybe they thought they had more traction, and then as soon as they got writing, they realized, this isn't gonna.
I don't know.
Take us very far. I don't know.
It just seems like they put too much effort into one thing and not in the other. And it seems like the whole resolution with Saz and everything is just like, I didn't like it. It didn't fall right for me or something. I don't know. Again, I'm not articulating it the way I want to because I can't find the words. Hence why I am not a Hollywood scriptwriter.
And who knows, what you're feeling, and that might not be expressed until the premiere of 5 and we get stuff and it's like, that's what was missing for back.
Maybe.
I mean, who knows? I'm hoping.
Yeah. I mean, that could possibly that possibly could be it as well. So
I mean, I don't know. Do you think one more episode would have done it better, or do you think we're okay with what we were at?
Maybe if we cut back on some of the Dudenoff stuff. I think.
I mean, don't get me wrong, the Dudenoff stuff was cool, but I can kind of see where it was a little much. But then it was like, oh, but this, okay, well, that explains some of the stuff from the past 3 seasons, or the
I mean, kind of,
yeah.
I don't know. Nick, are you as lost as we are?
I mean, I was kind of scratching my head on this one because I mean it's a great season, but it did seem very uneven compared to the first 3 seasons, in the sense that I think when you're throwing in all the Westies and you're dealing with a pretty big group of people and you have so many characters that you're managing at once between the Hollywood people and the Dudenoff crew and everything else, it did seem like maybe they'd bitten off a little bit more than they could chew when it came to giving us more of a cohesive storyline. And that's what maybe I think makes it seem almost confusing and just maybe a little bit too much when it came to, we're throwing so many characters at you, you're almost overwhelmed by all the characters we're dealing with. Because I think that is possibly it. Because the previous 3 seasons had more of a direct narrative storyline. You had fewer characters to worry about. Here, I think you have so many, it's hard to keep track, and that's why maybe it seems kind of confusing. Going also back to the concept of the Tia Leone and her character, the fact that she mentioned that her ex-husband was a mobster might also play into the fact of, is there a bigger picture to this? So I hope it doesn't turn into a Godfather situation where you have the mob controlling a certain part of Arconia, what have you. But the fact that she mentioned that her husband was a mobster, I'm like, I have a feeling that will probably be a big plot point for season 5. But yes, I can see why you guys are confused. I was just as confused, or rather, there were certain episodes I had to rewatch because I'm like, there's so many characters, it's hard to keep track of all of them. I think they did the best. I think they did the best that they could with juggling so many characters for the most part. I mean, we got a big review of who our murderer was and such, but I think had they maybe whittled down the appearances, it might have made it more cohesive and more understandable. But that doesn't mean it's a bad season. It's just that maybe they tried a different direction. And since the show keeps growing bigger and bigger and you're populating with more and more people, it's going to be hard to keep track of everything that's going on.
And especially when you're bringing in like characters that are played by recognizable faces and names.
Exactly.
Because then it's like, we're not going to hire Meryl Streep and only have her on screen for 5 minutes.
Exactly.
Right.
So if they had cast lesser known people, then they may not have been as compelled to write so much for them.
That's why I think it's almost like, the podcast of our 3 core characters. It's grown so much, it's almost gotten out of control.
Yeah.
And it's almost mirroring that of when they were just starting a podcast and they were getting big, and suddenly they're making a movie about them and all. So maybe that might also be the intent of maybe making you feel as overwhelmed as our 3 main characters are.
Yeah. And it's like, is that going to come back? Like, are they going to finish the movie and then like we'll get like a premiere or something? Or, what's going to happen with Oliver and Loretta? Now that Loretta's moving to New Zealand,
right?
And Oliver's like, "Yeah, I'll go with you." We're not gonna. I mean, having Loretta being off, having her own career, that makes it easy to have Meryl Streep not be there a good chunk of the time. Like, while she's fabulous and I love her, especially in this, she's a big star and she's got more Academy Awards to get nominated for. I mean, she did win I forget what for her guest appearance last season, so I don't remember if it was a Emmy or what. She won something. I mean, but I can't see them like suddenly cutting back on like Martin Short's screen time unless he's got another project coming up that's going to force him to have to be away. And then they can be like, oh, Oliver's in New Zealand. And like, should we call him? No, the time difference or whatever, that sort of thing. But that's not anything that I'm aware of.
Now,
either,
if that would happen and they quote unquote have him in New Zealand, my dream thing is he winds up bumping into a certain 7th Doctor while trying to do a tour of Hobbiton.
Yeah. or a certain director.
Yes. Wish list.
I mean, we got Ron Howard, so why not Peter Jackson? I'm just saying.
Exactly. Yes.
I totally thought the whole Ron Howard thing was just going to be the voiceover. What show was that? Arrested Development.
Yeah.
Where he does the voiceovers.
We don't talk about
like the body stand-in they had, where it was supposed to be him from the back. Like, did not look anything like what Ron Howard looks like. So when he actually showed up, I'm like, oh, okay, this is a thing. But for that's where you get somebody for like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
You get Scott Bakula for 5 minutes. You
Mhm.
get Sting for 5 minutes. Because they don't really play a whole lot into the plot. They're there just to
Right.
be like, hey, look at this famous person that we got to make an appearance.
And I did like what Charles did for Oliver with the pictures, and then taking a picture like, okay, here we go. After meeting Ron Howard, that was just like, oh, cool.
Yeah.
I mean, I agree with you, Rachel, when it comes to Loretta. As much as we love her and as much as we love Meryl Streep, I think it is also the writers, as I mentioned earlier, trying to maybe whittle down the cast a little bit to where we focus on certain characters rather than a million different plot threads. So maybe the fact that she's now in New Zealand allows us to focus on our big three and our new murder mystery and make it maybe more of a intimate season compared to this one, because this one was probably the biggest, most bombastic of the four that we've had. And maybe they want to dial it back a little bit and go back to the basics and back to the origins of the show, possibly.
Yeah. And I think maybe that's where that seems to be headed, with Tia Leone and her husband supposed to be, really connected to Arconia, and the fact that our lady's dead body is Lester. All signs seem to be pointing to the next season being very Arconia focused, as opposed to this season where parts of the Arconia were important, but it wasn't necessarily the fact that it's the Arconia that it's important. It's more that they were people living in the same building, and it didn't necessarily matter that it was that specific building. Now it seems like it's because it's the Arconia, which I think is a good, it's like they really stretched themselves, which is great. Gave us a change of scenery, literally and figuratively. You guys got to run around in a limo and eat some In-N-Out. Whatever. In-N-Out, I think it's overrated if you ask me, but that's just me. I'm not a West Coaster either, so but yeah, I think it does need to dial back. I think they stretched themselves. I think it got a bit too bloated. I think that's a good way of putting it. I think it just got a bit too bloated, and now it needs to dial it back and get back to what made the show so good in the first place, is these three characters in this location figuring out why this person is dead.
I totally agree. And also, I definitely want to try and learn how to play Oh Hell at some point.
Yeah, me too.
Is that an actual thing?
It is.
Okay.
It's an alternative version of Whist, apparently.
I don't know what that is either. I'm a Midwesterner. We play euchre around here, or spoons, depending on what age you are.
Yeah, Whist. Yeah, Whist, I guess, is more popular, especially in the UK. It's a card game that a lot of folks play in the UK. I think it's almost a version of bridge. I might be wrong, but I think it's like kind of that concept.
I've never played bridge before in my life.
There you go. Neither have I. My grandmother was a huge bridge player, but and so from what I gathered, it's a new take on Whist is what it is.
No. I see. I have to check the YouTube or something and be like, this is how you play Oh Hell. I'm sure there's at least one or two people. Any other comments, questions, concerns about this season? I think you guys have helped me work out my anxieties with this. So
yay!
Yeah, I don't think it's necessarily like one specific thing I can point to and go, it's this. I think it's a combination of things that I think maybe just this season, like I totally understand why they did what they did, and kudos to them for pushing and seeing what else they could do, with these characters. But at the end of the day, I think it's just, I think it was a bit too much. I think it was a bit, this burrito we love so much was a bit overstuffed.
The one thing I did want to add as trivia when it came to Oh Hell, apparently former President Bill Clinton is a prominent player of the game, and he learned to play it from Steven Spielberg.
Yep. if any of our listeners have ever played Oh Hell and want to tell us about it, or Whist or Bridge, if you're playing Bridge, how old are you? Again, Midwesterner. If you're of a certain age, you play euchre. If you're below a certain age, you play spoons. Just saying. At least for this part of the world, this part of the country. Or if you want to give us your take on either series we've talked about, Agatha All Along, or the latest season of Only Murders in the Building, you can send us an email, much like Shalane and Aaron and other folks do. Our email address is fiveishfangirls@gmail.com. And then you can always go to our website, which is the Fiveish.com, where we have links to all of our individual social medias and our podcast related ones as well, along with ways you can financially support us, either through Patreon or Ko-fi or buy merch on Redbubble, all that fun stuff. I'm so looking forward to my holiday break in December so that I can work on stuff on the backside of all of those things I just talked about. I love my job. I really do. I like making a regular paycheck again, but dang, 40 hours a week, it eats up a lot of time in your life. Especially when you get up at 5 a.m. every day for work.
So few hours left in the day.
Exactly. So, but yeah, all that stuff there, the FiveishFangirls.com, of course, book club as well, and some links to our Fiveish fam related things like the 5 million things that Nik's involved in, right?
Kind of, sort of, yes. I'm a man about podcasts, I suppose.
Yes. Well, at the very least, we have Gold Standard, of course. And we have Happiness and Darkness linked as well. So at the very least, you can find Nik with those, and then from there you can find Nik in all the other places as well.
Yes, too many places.
Yes, but it's so much fun.
It's like tattoos. You get one, you keep wanting more.
Oh my God, yes. I was doing a tally of how many I got this year. Earlier, I almost have to move to another hand. And that's just this year. So, alrighty then. Well, unless anyone has any more thoughts, Nik, thank you for joining us as always.
Well, thank you for having me. Definitely loved hanging with you guys again. It was a pleasure.
Unfortunately, Brittany got called away by family. But she sends her regards. She says night. Night, guys.
Night, Brittany.
Yeah, that's Brittany's bye-bye. And now
a big shout out to Chrissy as well, who I know wasn't on this podcast this week.
Yes. Poor Chrissy. She's almost recovered from that surgery, and then hopefully at least that part of her life will get a little more back to quote unquote normal. Of course, she's got 2 small kids that need raising. So so she and Jared are their schedules have fallen in a way that requires the kids to have a bit more parental supervision than they used to. So we can't falter for that for wanting to raise her children. So
parents' job is never delegated, I guess.
Nope, it's not. Never done. But with that, I guess now the rest of us will sign off for this week.
Yes, this is Holly from Wisconsin saying good evening.
And this is Rachel in Indianapolis, Indiana. I really hope that the water in that fountain is not connected to the rest of the water of the Arconia.
Yeah.
Somebody call the New York Public Works. Thank you, our Fiveish fam, for joining us on this week's geeky journey. If you enjoyed the show, don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review. Stay connected with us on our website, thefivishfangirls.com, and follow us on most social media with @FivishFangirls. Plus, check out our nonprofit, Fangirls Give Back, to see how we're making a positive impact in our community. Until next time, stay nerdy and let the squee continue.